El Niño is here, and researchers are already predicting it could be a Super El Niño, raising the risk of record-breaking global heat. And with that intensity comes the threat of devastating extreme weather, battering regions across the globe. But El Niño is a natural swing in our Earth's climate. So the question is, as we burn fossil fuels and churn greenhouse gases into the atmosphere, could that be altering this planetary pattern? Could we be tipping the balance? I'm Adam, I have a PhD in atmospheric physics, and I'm here to help you make sense of the changing planet we all share. And right now, we're just seeing the start of what could be a historically significant El Niño. Patron and climate of the channel, Roy, asked whether El Niño events, like this one, are happening more often. And the truth is, I didn't know. So I wanted to make a video looking into whether burning fossil fuels could be shifting this crucial climate phenomenon. Oh, and apart from asking great questions, patrons also make these videos possible, since I don't sell you all stuff you don't need, with product placements or with ads. Head up here if you want to join the team. Okay, but before we get into whether climate change is changing El Niño, we should probably talk about what El Niño even is. So there's this fluctuation in the Pacific Ocean called the El Niño Southern Oscillation. The ocean surface shifts between warmer than usual, El Niño, and cooler than usual, La Niña. Those terms literally translate to little boy and little girl. And maybe it's just because I'm not a native Spanish speaker, but to me it sounds cute in Spanish and extremely odd in English. Anyway, the little boy oscillation is something like a vast climate-shifting pendulum, swinging roughly every 2 to 7 years between the cooler and warmer states. Now, this analogy is definitely not perfect. The swings aren't regular like they are with a pendulum. There are plenty of years which aren't El Niño or La Niña, where the pendulum would basically just be hanging straight down, and El Niño isn't always directly followed by La Niña, or vice versa. But still, I thought it would be useful to talk about this pendulum because 1, it'll help explain certain changes to El Niño, and 2, it's nice to look at. Now, El Niño events affect the world's climate because, as the old saying goes, what happens in the tropical Pacific Ocean doesn't stay in the tropical Pacific Ocean. Of course, El Niño events having extra warm seas mean that parts of the world can experience more extreme heat in the seas, known as marine heat waves. That can hit all sorts of ocean ecosystems, but coral reefs are especially vulnerable to changes in temperature, and El Niño can often lead to severe coral bleaching, where corals lose their brilliant colors, a sign of severe stress. Changes in winds and ocean temperatures can have a major impact on tropical storms. El Niño typically increases the tropical storms forming in the Pacific while reducing the risk in the Atlantic. Then there's all sorts of other extreme weather connected to El Niño depending on where you are. The increased temperatures can ramp up the threat of heat waves and dial up drought, especially in parts of South America, Asia, the Caribbean, and Australia. At the same time, other areas, like southeastern South America, can face the opposite, with increased risk of downpours, which can drive flooding. Now, not all of this happens every El Niño, but this fluctuation does affect weather around the world, and that affects, of course, us. Research shows El Niño events come with major costs, from reduced food production to damages from weather disasters. So what about the El Niño that we're seeing starting right now? Well, we don't know exactly how it'll play out or what the consequences for the world's weather will be. But researchers at Noaa estimate that it has roughly a 2/3 chance of having ocean temperatures over 2 degrees Celsius. In other words, this would make it a very strong El Niño, also known, quite a lot more dramatically, as a Super El Niño. Scientists work this out by looking at what the atmosphere and ocean are up to above and below the sea surface. Now, this is a big, important, dangerous phenomenon affecting our climate, which begs the question, could the other big, important, dangerous phenomenon affecting our climate be affecting the pendulum swing of El Niño. Just to emphasize, El Niño itself is natural. It's not caused by burning fossil fuels. But there are loads of things that happen naturally which are being massively affected by burning fossil fuels, like the seasons and extreme weather events. So is there a climate impact on El Niño? There's some evidence that since the 1950s, El Niño events have got stronger, like the pendulum is swinging harder to the hot side than it used to. And if this year does evolve into a Super El Niño year, that'll certainly add to that evidence. But when scientists look into the deep past, they see that El Niño really doesn't always stay the same. That means we still can't currently pin things down. We can't say for sure whether or not the shifts in El Niño swings are down to climate change, or whether they're just random wobbles, El Niño doing its thing, changing over the years. And the New York Times reports that scientists are seriously divided on the topic. Okay, but what about what could happen in the future as we, unfortunately, continue burning fossil fuels, heating the planet, and changing the climate? Well, scientists use computer simulations of the atmosphere and ocean to see how phenomena like El Niño could evolve as the climate continues to change. Many simulations suggest that these swings could become more variable and more intense. That said, with limited evidence from the real world, it's not clear how much we should trust these simulations. This is definitely not something that's clear-cut. Climate change could well influence the pendulum of our oceans, and maybe it already has, but it's still an open question. But in another sense, of course climate change is having an effect on the impacts of the pendulum swing. Because even if it's not changing how the pendulum is moving, by heating the planet, we're effectively shifting the entire pendulum over to hotter territory. So now we're dealing with the swings in the climate and the overall heating we've caused by burning fossil fuels. It's like El Niño is adding insult to the injury we're already experiencing on an overheated planet. Like during the 2024 El Niño, there was a devastating downpour in Brazil, leading to hundreds of thousands of people getting displaced. This was made about twice as likely by climate change, and about twice as likely again by the El Niño. For other extreme weather, we've changed the climate so much that the heating effects from greenhouse gases outweighs the impact of El Niño. This is especially the case for deadly extreme heat. Scientists studied a heat wave in Asia that also took place during the 2024 El Niño. They found that the heating effects of climate change had a far bigger impact than the swings of El Niño. And we're seeing that with global heat too. On a global scale, El Niño years are overall hotter and La Niña years are overall cooler. But because we've heated the planet, what were once record-breakingly hot El Niño years are actually cooler than today's cool La Niña years. I mean, check out the global temperatures of these incredibly hot El Niño years from the 1980s and 1990s, when I was just a kid. They're way colder than anything we see now. And last year, 2025, had cooling La Niña conditions, but was still in the top 3 hottest years that humanity has ever measured. That's how much we've shifted the pendulum over. Oh, and if you appreciate the groundbreaking special effects that have gone into making this video, you might want to go ahead and subscribe. So ultimately, whether or not climate change is affecting the swing of El Niño or not, both are affecting us together. And that's pushing planet and people to the limit. To quote the United Nations Secretary General, El Niño conditions will pour fuel on the fire of a warming world. And now we're in this position where the last few months have been teaching us how expensive and insecure fossil fuels can be, and the coming days and months are about to remind us just how severe the impacts of climate change can be. And I just hope that we're ready to learn those lessons and stop playing with our planet's pendulum as quickly as possible. But right now, as I record this, much of Europe is undergoing devastating record-breaking temperatures. And despite everything about this being abnormal, some people are dismissing these deadly temperatures as normal summer. And, well, here's why that's nonsense. Okay, until next time. Bye. Oh my god, this is all so unnecessary.